Here are 3 tips when the other parent is not following the custody order. Hi, I'm Alycia Kinchloe, the owner of Kinchloe Law, a family law practice based in the Philadelphia area. One of the things that I've seen a lot of, unfortunately, during the pandemic is one parent withholding the child from the other parent. And when the courts first shut down, a lot of that ramped up. Sometimes it was of concerns about the virus, not knowing how it was spread, not knowing whether or not the other party was following the guidelines. Some people believe that, because of what was going on and some of the orders we were receiving from the state and local governments, that they were not supposed to actually be doing custodial exchanges. And as time continued to develop, there became more and more information readily available, as well as information from our state that generally custody orders are supposed to be followed. Now, where that left a lot of people was that the courts simply weren't open in a way that allowed people to believe they had a way to enforce the custody orders. So, what I want to talk a little bit about today are some things you can do if you have found or are still finding yourself in that situation. Now, as always, you want to speak with an attorney licensed in your state about the facts specific to your case. And these tips that I'm going to give you are just that. They are tips and they're for informational purposes. Hopefully, you find them helpful, but ultimately, when it comes to your particular case, you want to speak to your attorney. Now, the first tip is to make sure that you're documenting the information. So, generally, we like to get this in some sort of writing. Whether you guys tend to communicate by email or by text messages, you want to have information. So, one thing you can do is just kind of, say, look, I'm ready to pick up the child. I will meet you at the exchange location, whether that is at the other parent's house or if it's at a police precinct, wherever that is supposed to occur. Now, one of the things that the changes in a lot of things left kind of open was that some of the exchanges were happening after school or at school. And with schools being shut down and school occurring at homes, it was unclear, and definitely for people who wanted to abuse the situation, it didn't leave a lot of information as to what to do when those things didn't occur, especially if your order was silent as to what happens when there is no school. So some people use that as a way around trying to follow the order. So you can document your attempts to do the exchanges, to make arrangements in lieu of the fact that there was no longer schools. And in the same situation today, a lot of schools are hybrid or they are virtual in nature, and a lot of people are not going back to school full time in person. So, documenting that information. If you were supposed to be doing your exchanges at a police precinct, then you probably already know, especially in places like Philadelphia County, you can have an officer sign off on your sheet. So, a lot of the precincts will have these readily available to you, and these are sheets that document when you arrived, how long you waited, whether the other parent arrived or not, and the name or badge number of the officer who's signing the form, along with the date and time. So that way you're going to kind of be able to keep a record of whether or not the other party was coming and how often this was happening. And it's signed by someone who isn't you. Now, the other thing you can do is if you're using a co-parenting app like Our Family Wizard, which I've talked about in a previous video, you can also use that as a way to communicate about the exchanges. But what you're doing here is just having and recording the information. You can also keep track in a calendar that you're keeping track as you go. So typically you don't want this to be something that you're going back and try to fill in later. You want to record things as they're happening because that gives it a little bit more authenticity, a little bit more credibility. So again, so the first step is track what's going on and what's happening and your attempts to make additional arrangements outside of what is going on because things just are different. The next thing you want to do is look at what options are available to you. Now, what can be available to you is going to differ based on your particular county. Each county has different rules, and each different county has different levels of the courts being open to the general public. For example, Montgomery County allows a lot of filings electronically, so you can file things online. Delaware County for family court, you are able now to be able to go into the courthouse and file your documents in the courthouse. In Philadelphia County, you still can't technically do that, but you can drop things off. And attorneys and even lay people can file things via email. but there are a couple of additional steps that you have to make sure that you're complying with. So you want to know exactly what's going on in your county. If you go to the Pennsylvania Court's website, you can actually click on your particular county and look for the most up-to-date orders, mandates, rules that are listed for your particular county. So you can kind of continue to see how things are changing. And initially, when everything shut down, there were orders coming out very frequently. The first thing I would do every day would be to go and just see if there was anything new, and often there was for a while. And that was because they're not only updating family court, they're updating all the other courts. So again, go and check and see what your court is allowing you to do. But some options are filing for contempt, which means that the other party is willfully not following the order. Now, particular issues that you face in this, well, if the courts aren't open, then what happens? Is that petition for contempt just going to sit? Am I not going to see my child? And unfortunately, that's a lot of what we saw initially, was because the courts weren't open and they weren't hearing those types of cases. A lot of those things that in Philadelphia County that got filed during the time frame still have not been scheduled, and we're coming up on a year. A lot of cases that were scheduled prior to the pandemic being shut down, so things that were scheduled from March until December, but that had already been scheduled before March, some of those still have not been rescheduled. So that gives you an idea of what the wait could look like. So in that situation, you have a couple of other alternatives along with filing the contempt, is that you can also file a motion or petition for special relief. That's or expedited relief. That is the particular motion you would file asking for something specific, asking the court to grant you some particular relief. And I found that to be helpful in a situation where there has been an extended period of time where one party is withholding the child from the other. It gives the courts a way to kind of step in and tell the other parent, hey, you need to follow the order. The custody rules are still supposed to be followed during a pandemic. And sometimes you can ask the judge to provide additional instruction that allows for the police or the sheriff's department to help to enforce the particular order. It can also be an opportunity to modify, at least temporarily, some parts of the order until you get back to court that will allow for it to be easily followed. So for example, if there was pickups and drop-offs at school, maybe we change this to at curbside at mom's house or curbside at dad's house at a particular time of the day when the child is finished virtual school. So it gives you a way to get some type of relief to be able to get through until the next hearing. Now, the other opportunity that you might have or option you might have is filing for an emergency petition. Now, generally, emergency petitions in most counties are safety related, so there needs to be some risk of harm or issue to the child. And usually these don't rise to that level unless there's been no contact at all with the non-custodial parent and the other parent. But that is a particular option that you might have, is not the one that I would generally go with because it could get just tossed out and it could be a waste of time and waste of money. But when you're not seeing your child, I understand why you want to make sure that you have all options in front of you. Now, when you're filing for your contempt, another tip here is to put in there what relief that you're asking for. Because it's one thing to say, hey, parent A, mom is not following the order and not giving me the child, she should be held in contempt. Okay, the court might say, yes, that's fine. But they need to know what type of relief you want. So make sure you're specific in there. If I'm filing for a client a petition for contempt, what I'll ask for generally is makeup time. So all the time they're missing, I would like for my client to get that back. And then I might also ask for a modification in there to change maybe a particular part of the order. So like we were talking about just earlier about changing some of the language in the order to make it something that the parties can actually follow given what's going on. Another thing I will ask for, is that we ask for attorney's fees. And that way my client is not bearing the cost of hiring me and making me come to court to fight for his right to see the child, which the other parent should have been doing. A person should also understand that if they are held in contempt, aside from the things that the party is asking for, the court could hold them in contempt and put them in jail or order them to pay a fine. So there are additional things that the court can actually order, but if there's specific things that you want to put that in your relief in your contempt petition. All right, now, so that's the second thing. So what first thing was look at what your court is doing. The first thing is to put everything in writing. Second thing is to look at what your court is doing and what options you may have to you in seeking relief. And the third thing would be to try to work out an agreement with the other party. Now, sometimes it doesn't always happen, but sometimes you can work things out. I know some parents switch to a week on, week off during the pandemic, or they switched to maybe a month here and a month there in order to limit the amount of time the child was going back and forth between the two homes. Sometimes there was an adjustment based on maybe the work of the other parent. So if one parent was a first responder, and so was by nature coming into contact with more people who could be carrying the virus, and they may have opted for, okay, well, the child will spend this period of time with you until things get a little bit more under control, but once they are, then this time will be sent the other way. And another option, so a bonus option, is to look at mediation, a co-parenting counselor. I know they have been very helpful for a lot of my clients during this time to come up with solutions while they wait for the courts to catch up to the things that are filed. And in a lot of situations, things have worked out more smoothly for them. It may be more cost effective in some situations than hiring an attorney and going to court. And definitely with regard to the time, it's a lot more efficient. So those are some things to consider if the other parent is not basically providing the child or exchanging your child for your custodial time. So I hope you found this video helpful. Make sure you hit subscribe and hit the little notification bell so you'll get a notification every time we drop a brand new video. We're doing one for every day of 2021. And make sure you leave a comment. I want to know if this is helping you and what other things you would like us to cover. All right, until next time, take care.